So you're good, Brad?
Yes, it is now streaming.
Excellent. Well, welcome everyone. We'll begin call to order our City Council work session for September 7th, 2021. I have two topics for today. First, solid waste rate review, and then a review of the draft comp plan. Craig?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Tonight, we're going to be discussing Municipal Code Title 8, Chapter 8, Solid Waste Management, and it's going to be under rates, which is 8.20.080. Normally, Pride Disposal would supply the city manager a report, annual report, on or before March 15th. And then the city manager would provide that information to council by April 15th of that year, if any rates or adjustments to the rates needed to happen or not. But with the city manager leaving in May, that didn't happen. And I actually helping Kristen out with this. So tonight with this, Chris Bell is the third party that reviewed the rates, and we'll be providing the presentation. And also tonight we have Kristen, Cindy, Mike, and Eric from Pride Disposal in case there's any questions that you guys might have. Go ahead, Chris.
Okay, I'm gonna switch over to my screen if that's okay, Brad.
Yes, that should be fine.
Okay. All righty. So, Mr. Mayor, City Council, thank you for giving me the opportunity to present the information from the rate review. And this is becoming a kind of a regular occurrence these days. I can get this thing to walk right now. Okay. So the current rates that are in place right now were last adjusted in January 2020. And at that particular time, the rates remained unchanged for the carts. The container rates increased just an insignificant amount, less than 1%, and the drop box hauls were increased by $5. At that particular time, if you recall, there was some questions on whether Metro was going to increase the tipping fee mid-year, and they ended up pushing that back to July 1st of this year. So those were the rates we implemented, and we also had another rate ready to go just in case Metro were to implement. The adjusted results for 2020 were really good. All three lines of business were within, combined, all three lines of business were within the 8 to 12%. However, container and drop box were over that amount, with cart being a little bit lower at 9%. For 2021, the projected costs were escalated. Couple things are going on in 2021 that are significant. Number one, the cost of processing recycling has significantly decreased. In 2021, the value was increased, which is offsetting the processing cost. An initial review that I recently done shows that there's probably about a 40, I have on here 40%, but it's a little closer to 80% change in the rates from last year, which is really good. Yard debris processing costs have increased by $3.35 per ton. And that's primarily due to the transport of the materials to a distant processor when compared to what Pride was taking them a couple years ago, which was to Grimm's, which was literally right up the street from them. Other costs that are increasing this year is the labor, the collective agreement with the Teamsters, and most franchise haulers within the Portland metropolitan area have a collective agreement with the Teamsters. And disposal costs, as I noted earlier, have increased this year. There was two increases that Pride incurred. One was on January 1st, and it went from $103.60 to $107.48. And the increases were primarily due to contractual obligations with the landfill and the transportation company. However, Metro increased the regional system fee, the disposal taxes charged on garbage, by $8.40 per ton on July 1st. So the July 1st disposal fee that Pride is currently charging is $115.88, and I think that's 8 cents difference than what Metro is currently charging. And so they're almost the same. The projected 2021 results at this point were 8.9%, which is just a little under 9% for the composite. Cart is decreased a little. Container is still above the 12%, where Dropbox is decreased. One of the things that's not in this projected 2021 results is that change in the processing, that delta. At the time that I put this stuff together, I didn't have that additional detail, so that's not reflected in here. If that did, that projected 2021 results would probably increase by 1% or 2%. There's two alternatives that the city has for raising the rates, and as Craig explained earlier, Municipal Code 8-20 details how the rates are to be calculated. And so if the rate of return falls between a certain range, then there's an index. The CPI has a percentage index applied. So in this case, it's greater than 11%, but less than 12%. The rate adjustment is 75% of the CPI index. And so right now, the current rate, just using that method, the CPI is estimated at this particular point in time at 2.25%. So you'd see for a 35-gallon cart an increase of 65 cents. And that's just applying the CPI to the rates at this point. So that's the first alternative. However, there is the second alternative, which would be the pass-through of the Metro tipping fee increase, and then adjust the rates to 75% of the CPI on January. So this alternative would be have the city council pass through the disposal increase that in this case it would be 51 cents per customer per month for a 35-gallon roll cart, and then apply, as I showed earlier, that increase, that 65-cent increase on January 1st. So this is alternative 2. Pass through the tipping fee increase effective immediately, and then apply the portion of the CPI on January 1st. Third alternative would be to pass through the disposal increase and adjust the rates on January 1st. And this proposal, this alternative is the preferred alternative of Pride Disposal. Spoke with Kristen. She said that they were going to be requesting this.
Chris, hate to interrupt, but
yeah.
If these numbers don't reflect the change in recycling,
Mm-hmm.
how is this data valid?
Well,
today?
The question you got to ask yourself is twofold, because I knew this question was going to come up. The code says that there's a portion of the CPI that's applied, so it doesn't look at the projected results of where the city's going to go. And so what we're proposing here, or what's being proposed here, are two things: the percentage of the CPI, because that CPI is based on the prior year, on 2020, what was submitted. It's not based on the projected results. And then the other ask is the increased disposal. So those are the two asks that are being requested on the rate increase. If you did apply the projected 2021, then you're kind of falling outside of what the code says. And if and again, your city council, you guys can make that change if necessary. But I wanted you to be aware that the things are starting to look good on the recycling side. But on the other side too is there's costs that are increasing. The CPI that I have on here is 2.25%, but we're seeing that there are significant other costs too that may not be reflective in that CPI. So there's a lot of increased costs that may not be accurately reflected in the 2021.
So Chris, this is Tim. So in past years, the conversation has been around hitting certain profit margins.
Yeah.
And I apologize if I missed it. This is the first time I've heard the CPI thing. And I guess I'm a little confused. Maybe you can help me out, because we could hypothetically have a situation where Metro lowers tipping fees,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Which ideally those would get passed along to the consumers too. But if we have the CPI rule, it would continue to go up. So how does the CPI rule work with the guaranteed margin that's in our contract?
Yeah, it's not necessarily a guaranteed margin, but you bring up a good question, because you know, when I don't know what the mindset was when this was adjusted, but there are changes that are happening, whether it's the processing, the recycling processing, or the tipping fee that's going up significantly. So the approach was going to be, you know, run a CPI, run that for a couple of years, and then when necessary, do a rate review to kind of true up the rates, right? And hopefully that the rates and the CPI, you know, are reasonable for a runtime. But that hasn't been the case. So there's kind of a gray area in what you're looking at right now. You know, what should city council do? Because you could adjust the rates, you could pass through the CPI. The processing or the cost of processing could go up to where it's actually they're getting money back. At that point, you know, that rate of return could be significantly above that 12% if that's the case. And in that case, you know, the way this is written up, you know, you could have a CPI adjustment also.
I mean, the difference between, so do these numbers reflect the 40%?
No, because your code doesn't take into consideration the projected rate of return for the current year. It says adjust the CPI or do the CPI adjustment if it falls between these ranges, right? And if I don't have it here on this, I don't have a detail, but I do have it on the report, you know, what that CPI, what that mechanism is for adjusting the rates. You know, and if it falls between this, then we adjust the rates.
And when,
So if the 40% trends to 80%, then I mean, obviously we could be sitting here in a year and doing either, you know, a no increase for a year, or even potentially decreasing the rates in a year from now.
You could be potentially doing that.
Kristen, you had your hand up?
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to point out that the part of the code that I think the question that is, I think, trying to be prompted is like, what happens if something swings the rates really kind of out of whack outside of that range? And so the way that the code is worded is that, so last year we came in at 7.94%, I think. So technically we were outside of the range, which is why we didn't follow the CPI model. Chris came in and did projections and, you know, kind of tried to predict what this next year would look like. So if the code says if we fall below 8% or above 12%, then it calls for a full scale reset of the rates, looking at recycling costs, disposal costs, labor costs, insurance costs, all of those things as a whole. But if we fall within the range of 8 to 12%, it's either CPI or a percentage applied to the CPI based on where in the range we fall. But this year, as Chris indicated, is a bit of an anomaly because of the big metro increases. And with the recycling prices, they have been getting slowly better than they have been for quite some time, but they're still very volatile and they're not consistent. They haven't been consistently at a very good price for a time. So there's a little bit of uncertainty, perhaps, of expecting it to be that way for another year if we were to look at projecting that.
Thanks, Kristen. Okay, go ahead, Chris.
All right. So those are a summary of the three alternatives. And so if there's questions or additional steps that you want me to take, you know, I will follow up with you on that. The question, yes.
could you go back to the 2021 projection?
Yes,
So that's for this year. So
that's for this year.
so that you've got real data and then you're projecting for the last, 4 months of the year?
I've got, well, no, this is projecting based on information from last year. So what it is, I took last year's numbers and projected it out. I don't have the pro forma for the first 8 months of this year and then projected 4 months.
So this is a projection. So let me just make sure I understand. This is, you're projecting the entire 2021 calendar year
Based on 2020 results.
based on 2020 results.
Yes.
But we're not supposed to, but per our code, we don't live in projections. We're living on the actuals from 2020.
Correct.
And we go back to the 2020 actuals. We're in the 8 to 12% composite return.
Well, we are on projections too, but yes.
Well,
Yeah.
Yeah.
What, yeah.
I'm not
I
going
mean,
to live in the projections because the projections don't include the recycling data. So I'm not looking at that personally. And so
And it
now,
makes-
if you quickly go to the three options that you're proposing, again,
The first one is the application of the CPI per the code.
Yep.
The second one is passing through the rate increase for Metro and then applying the CPI on January per the code.
so again, that one passing. So that was to suggest we do a new adjustment as soon as we can put it through the billing, and then
Correct.
again on January 1.
Correct. And here's why that's problematic, because if you do it today, you've got a rate adjustment that's going out maybe in October, maybe November, and then you got another rate adjustment in January.
Yep.
I actually prefer this option because I think it's very clear then that you say this adjustment you're getting hit with right now in October is 100% due to Metro deciding to increase the tipping fee.
How do you educate people on that though?
I want a full page, bright yellow insert in every bill with 72-point font.
But I understand where you're coming from, Doug, but at the end of the day, I mean, we don't have any actuals based on those rate increases, right? That's just projection.
For the rate increases, no, the two rate increases.
For the tipping fee increases.
Oh, for tipping fees, actual, that's already been passed.
Well, I know, but that's built into the projection models that you did?
Yes.
But because we're within the range, we're just looking at a CPI adjustment, right?
Yes.
And so then you're suggesting option 3 to try to get ahead of the
Well,
game and maybe potentially have a lower rate increase
correct. You got two things going
down
on
the road.
Yeah, you have the contractual, or not the contractual, but the CPI adjustment. But you also have the tipping fee increase, which went into effect on July 1st. So as of July 1st, Pride's paying that additional amount per ton for the disposal at Metro, and what they're not asking to be made whole on the last 6 months. They're asking to be made whole on the rate that's going to be in place on January 1st. So that disposal increase, that 75 cents per gallon, reflects how much of the disposal cost went up from January 1st of 2021 to January 21st or January 1st of 2022. That's what that represents.
But just to be clear, Chris, does that say that I want to treat our hauler right?
Yeah.
Our code talks just about the CPI if they're in the range. Does our code say about adjusting for
Pass-throughs.
pass-throughs?
No, that's why we're having this alternative 2 and 3.
Any guess on how much of the pass-through or the tipping fee increase is offset by the change in the value of the recycled material?
No, I haven't made that calculation, but we could make a projection and see what that overall impact would be.
And again, I echo Keith's sentiment. We have an awesome hauler and I want to treat him right, but I just feel like that would be some great data to see so we can understand this.
Go back one page.
Yeah, now the disposal on this one is lower than the disposal on alternative 3. Because what this is doing is calculating that metro tipping fee increase, the taxes on a per ton basis. Whereas alternative 3 looks at what the disposal rate is going to be on January 1st, 2022. And then sets that rate increase. Sets the difference between the increase as of January 1st, 2021 and January 1st, 2022. So it takes into consideration what the full increase is going to be.
Yeah, the one thing I'm noticing here is that at the end of the day, if we do with alternative 3, someone is paying more on starting in January than they would be in alternative 2. At least that looked the 35-gallon cart, right? Because if I'm looking at this, if we go with this option, they get bumped up a little bit, bumped up 51 cents now, and then in January they get bumped up again to 30.20.
Mm-hmm.
But then if you look at alternative 3, they get bumped up to 30.43.
Yes.
Not
just
quite
don't know
sure
if you
why that
can-
is. That doesn't
you
make
can-
sense to me.
Well, the difference between the tipping fee increase is just the taxes. That's $8 per ton. The tipping fee increase between the 2 years is a lot higher. I think it's $12 or $13 a ton. Because that takes into consideration also the operational increase and the contractual increases that Pride's going to be incurring for disposal and for transportation cost.
Yeah, but doesn't alternative 2 also take that into account?
No, alternative 2 just says pass through the metro tipping fees. The metro tipping fee the metro taxes on disposals.
Well, that's the top part, but the bottom part then is what you're saying we would do on January 1st with the
Yeah.
75%. So that's why I'm a little confused in why at the bottom, when we at the beginning, we bump it to 29.54, then we bump it again to 30.20. And why in alternative 3 we're bumping it to 30.43 instead. Like it doesn't make sense to me. You're getting part of the money earlier, but then you're also going to charge more in alternative 3 in come January than you are in alternative 2. That doesn't add up to me.
I don't think you
Is
can,
it-
go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, is it because they're trying to play, if we don't increase it now and they wait till January, then they have these few months to catch up. So that would make sense to me that it would be a little more come January.
No, what the difference is, in the report, it lays it out very nicely. It says that, the tipping fee increase that Metro has passed through is $8 per ton, approximately $8 per ton. The expected increase per ton between the tipping fee on January 1st, 2021 and the tipping fee on January 1st, 2022 is $12.28. And so we're calculating that tipping fee increase either on $8 for the pass-through fee effectively, or we calculate the rate on a $12.28 increase on the disposal fee that's going to be effective on January 1st.
I'm not following you, but I don't want to belabor the point.
Well, Chris, I don't think you can, if we're following the code.
Yeah.
You do the CPI and the CPI only.
Yeah.
If you want to bring in the metro fees, which I truly hate, the increased metro fees, there's no justification, there's no explanation. They're passing a tax. And great, but then you need to take the recycling data and put that in the mix too.
That's kind of where I'm at. I think we got to see both.
So one direction, I'm in bucket A or bucket B.
And so that's a pretty easy calculation that I can work with Eric and get some of that information and provide that additional workup and get that to you, to the city council members, and follow up with you on that.
Yes, the other alternative is if our adjusted rates are always based on trailing actuals, then we do nothing with the metro tipping fee. We do our normal adjustment on January 1st like we do every year, and then whatever the actuals come out to be a year later, then we may do another adjustment then based on that, right?
Yeah,
that's bucket A or option A or B. Kristen, your hand up.
Yeah, thank you. Not to overcomplicate things, but the whole section of the code that refers to how rates are set, there is a section D in that 8.20080 that talks about basically rates are to be adjusted annually based on the methodology we've all been talking about. But it does allow kind of an exception specifically for disposal costs, either at the landfill or that are passed through by Metro that could happen more frequently, because basically the code was written in a way to build in for these unexpected significant increases. So ultimately, the council can still obviously decide to do what you feel most comfortable with, but I just wanted to point that out because I think it's relevant to some of the conversation.
Yeah, and that's what Josh needs to chime in about on that topic, on that point. Eric, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on the recycling pricing and factoring that into the numbers. That the pricing that we have seen that has improved is in the report that we sent, submitted to the city, and will continue to be put into those numbers in the real time, or on the actual data that CPI gets based on. And so while there has been improvement, it's already represented for what we have experienced so far in those numbers. And you can see in Chris's forecast where we're dropping potentially down into like that 8% range, that will capture any benefits that are coming from that pricing. So when the code CPI is factored the next time, those benefits and improvements are built into those numbers for what that CPI would look like. I hope that makes sense and explains it a little bit better.
Mayor,
Thanks,
this is
Eric.
Josh. Just to respond to your question there. So as Kristen alluded, there's basically an annual review process. And that's the section of the code we've been talking about primarily, but there's a separate section that says, separate and apart from that council can amend the rates at any time and in any frequency to respond to increased operating costs directly attributable to landfill disposal costs. So that's the exception to the annual review process, is if there are landfill disposal cost increases, we can adjust based on that.
What tipping fee would be a well, is that a landfill disposal cost or is that just a Metro tax? Not to get persnickety.
No, it says rates may be amended more than once every 12 months, except for instances where landfill disposal rates have been increased by the Metro regional government. So it's awkwardly written, but it's pretty much saying if Metro increases the rates, then the city council may amend or may adjust rates.
Yeah, I'll have to defer to the solid waste experts, but my understanding from previously dealing with this issue and actually with Chris, I think in the past, that tipping fees are usually considered part of the landfill disposal cost. It's all kind of rolled together.
Yes.
I think the code was written back when Metro has the contract for where all the tons in the region went, and that has changed since this part of the code was written, which is why it refers to landfill disposal rates being increased by Metro. I think that's why it's a little bit messy there.
So hearing Josh's interpretation of the code, I would prefer to do one lump increase versus multiple increases.
Thanks,
I would like to see, because I know you have the data in the report, but I would like to see the analysis with the recycling rate increases taken into effect. Because if we're gonna add the tipping fees as a non-standard review, outside the CPI process, then we should look at the whole thing, not just one angle.
Well, you could certainly argue that the recycling is a disposal expense. So it would fall into the code exception. So
Right.
other thoughts, direction council would like before we move on?
Good with either one or two. I don't like three.
Anyone else have thoughts?
I think I would prefer three, where customers just see a one-time increase and not an increase, and then on top of that, another increase.
And just to be clear, everyone's, am I hearing in those answers that everyone's okay doing this without seeing the impact of the recycling rate changes?
No, I would also like to see that.
I'm okay with number three. I agree with Kim on this. I would still also like to see, I mean, I know it's fluctuating and it's volatile, but I'd like to see how those recycling rates are affecting. Ultimately, as Doug and Josh both indicated, at the end of the year, we'll take another look at this. I mean, I want to make sure that we put them in that correct zone, which has always been our goal. But I kind of like three, but I'd still like to see those rates. I don't know that it would change my mind, but.
Well, it might change the numbers, I guess is my point.
Yeah, true.
So I think the majority of the direction is, Chris, why don't you update the report and come back?
Okay. I can do that.
And then we'll pick one of the alternates with the different data.
Okay. Okay, fantastic.
If it changes the numbers.
Nobody, so only one person liked alternative two?
I don't have an opinion yet.
Well, by the time we get this, alternative two may be, it'd be too close to January 1st to really.
Yeah, that's possible.
Okay.
I'm good with setting it aside since I seem to be the only one who likes it.
Okay.
Oh, I'm not against it. Just be clear. All right. So I think we'll wrap up with this and we'll move on to the next topic.
Okay.
So thanks, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody. So next is a review of the draft comp plan. Erica.
Mayor, Council, thanks for your time this evening. I know it's 6:30, so we're going to try to be quick here with this presentation. I just want to let you know that Jean Simpson is also on the line with us tonight. She has served on our Community Advisory Committee for the comp plan update, as well as the Project Advisory Committee for this project as well. Anna Ismate, who's been helping guide the community through the process for the past 2 years, is also on the line, and she'll be giving a presentation. The draft comp plan was sent out to you on August 27th, and so I hope that gave you plenty of time to review the document. And then we can certainly answer any of your questions as we go through here. So Anais, I'm gonna hand it over to you.
Great, thank you. I will go ahead and share my screen. Great. Good evening, City Council and our Planning Commission chairs that are making up this joint work session. So as Erica said, we're here to share with you a recap of the adoption proceedings for the comprehensive plan, as well as just a general recap of all of the work we've done in the last couple of years, for which I know most of you or all of you are very familiar with at this point. So yeah, as I said, tonight's agenda, quick adoption process approach and our timeline, basically how this has been unfolding over the last couple of months, recap of what we've done, where we've been, and then of course reviewing the overall document, taking a tour and collecting your feedback and final thoughts to the draft comprehensive plan. And as I noted at the bottom, it has been a long road and we've all learned a lot together. So especially big thank you to you as a council and planning commission and your staff for really pulling off quite a process. So quick recap of our adoption process. We first came to the Planning Commission at a work session in early June to review the draft comprehensive plan. We worked through it in 2 sections. So we reviewed the first 3 blocks with them at their first work session, and then we reviewed the last 3 blocks with them at their second work session. And then staff led a 3rd work session in early July to just confirm the list of edits and revisions that we received through those 2 work sessions. We incorporated those into an updated draft comprehensive plan document, and then a recommendation to City Council through the work session process. So the next step is where we are tonight. So this joint work session with our Planning Commission chair. After this work session, we will incorporate any final revisions into the final comprehensive plan document. Of course, knowing that there's been quite a bit of work that's already gone through in the last iteration of this document. And then after tonight, we will go to a Planning Commission hearing at the end of October, a City Council hearing in mid-November, which will hopefully lead to the adoption of the Sherwood 2040 Comprehensive Plan. So tonight's objectives are 6 blocks here on the left. It is an opportunity for City Council members for you to ask any questions of our Planning Commission, if you want any clarification or reflection on the process and any of the revisions that have been suggested for the document, for you to provide us any final thoughts or feedback, and then also recommendations for Planning Commission to consider prior to a public hearing. Does anybody have any questions on the adoption process I just lined out, or does that feel fairly clear? All right, seeing none. Quick recap of our 2040 process. So as Erica said, we started this many years ago through a community visioning process in 2018. That's also kind of the time we started or kicked off a lot of technical background work, including your housing needs analysis and economic opportunities analysis. The 2018 visioning process was community-wide. Thousands participated, and it essentially became the framework to updating the comprehensive plan and informed the process itself. The comprehensive plan visioning process reached hundreds of community members, developed a framework for the comp plan, and was guided by a community advisory committee. The same committee also served on the comprehensive planning process, and this vision was adopted by City Council on January 15th, 2019. Then we turned our attention to updating the comprehensive plan. There was still a lot of background and technical work happening in the background, but the comprehensive plan process was a 2-year process. We worked through an iterative process where you have seen this flow chart before, but we met with you multiple times through each of the different blocks of 6 blocks. And we also had a variety of different activities and engagement and outreach efforts throughout each of these blocks that were guided by a project advisory committee, of which we had some representation from both City Council and Planning Commission. And so they were there to help guide our outreach efforts and the entire process all along. And then finally, we are in the adoption phase. So kick this off this summer in June of this year. And we're hoping to wrap this up by November 2021. So my apologies, I should say November instead of October. All right, so quick document tour. I'm hoping that folks were able to put their eyes on this. I will stop sharing just for a moment here so that I can share the document. Hold on one moment here. Apologies. All right, so this is your draft comprehensive plan. We have our list of acknowledgements, and the plan itself is organized around 3 sections. The first describes what is a comprehensive plan, and this is the section where we hope to answer the questions of what is a plan, who uses the comprehensive plan, how is the plan used in decision making, Why are we updating the plan now? What was the process for developing the vision for the plan? And then also a recap of what is Sherwood like today? Then it moves into our urban form. So this is the land use gallery. And I'll flip through these pages momentarily here. Land use gallery that just kind of shows visually what the land use development patterns have looked like in Sherwood. And then we move into the vision, goals, and policies with a quick little user guide of how to read the vision, the goals, and the policy statements, and how they're organized and their color coding, etc. So I don't need to flip through all of these pages because I'm sure you have this in your email or up on your screens already. But I did want to just pause and see if anybody had any initial reactions or feedback to share with the Planning Commission or staff and myself at large. Okay, seeing none, that was just our document tour. I'm going to go back to the presentation and just kind of walk through the key decision points that were made for each of the 4 or the 6 blocks, and recap what the activities were, and what we learned through each of the blocks processes. All right, I'm going back and forth between all of the different screens, so there we go. All right, so starting with the first block, we cover thriving and diversified economy. Let me just pull my notes here. So lots of different things happen in this block. This is where we had an updated economic opportunities analysis. We did targeted outreach to community members that primarily focus on economic development efforts and activities, both specific to Sherwood and also to the region. We had an online survey that reviewed policy concepts. We had our PAT, so members from City Council and Planning Commission review the outreach and engagement activities and the stakeholder interviews. We had our CAC and our TAC review of the block, as well as a review by you, City Council, and our Planning Commission. And this is the block where feedback was given to really encourage the development of industrial and high employment businesses to help increase the city's tax base through a faster rate of jobs per resident rather than housing units. We also explicitly called out office commercial to make that a distinction from retail commercial when talking about different commercial areas in the city. And then we also identified opportunities to develop infrastructure and emerging technologies to support employment, while also ensuring access to the broader metro region. So this block definitely went through a couple rounds of revision until it was finalized at the end of its 3-month process. And then I think you've seen it also since then. The next block was strong community, culture, and heritage. So some key activities that occurred throughout this block, we had a interactive mapping exercise at the Sherwood Art Walk. So this was prior to COVID-19. We were able to get out in front of community members. We also had targeted outreach and focus groups with organizations in Sherwood that primarily focus on public involvement, arts, history, and heritage in Sherwood. Once again, we had an online survey to review those policy concepts. We also met with the Chamber of Commerce and the City Volunteer Coordinator and library staff. And of course, we had a review by our PAT, our CAC, our TAC, Planning Commission, and City Council. And I would say some of the major items that came through this block were primarily about pulling apart different objectives that included several different concepts. There was some general wordsmithing for clarity that occurred in the development of the goals and policies. And there was also a conversation in this block about engaging underrepresented communities within Sherwood and creating opportunities for youth to be involved in civic affairs. Strategic and collaborative governance. This was the last block before COVID-19 hit. We had a public workshop, I think it was the first week of March in 2020. So great timing. We also had an online survey to review policy concepts. And once again, PAT, CAC, and TAC review, and Planning Commission and City Council review. In this block, the discussion focused on emphasizing the importance of transparency and clear communication from city government, as well as generally making public engagement and decision-making activities accessible and open to the public. There was also emphasis on the importance of public services for really maintaining and elevating the livability of the community, and the need to grow these services so that they commensurate with growth. And also, yeah, that's what I meant. The fourth block was housing. Also, a lot of activities went into this block. You had an updated housing needs analysis. Your community advisory committee led targeted outreach to community members that primarily focus on housing development, access, and affordability. So folks that are just generally involved in housing. There was an online housing preferences survey, which was different than an online survey to review the policy concepts. So there was a visual preference survey. We also hosted a couple of in-depth interviews with community members to develop a housing snapshot. So really trying to tell the story of various types of community members in Sherwood and what their access to housing is like. And in addition, we had an online survey to review all those policy concepts, as well as an iterative review period among all of the different committees, councils, and commissions. There was a lot of engagement in this block. I think we had nearly 1,100 responses to the online survey and the visual preferences survey. We also had lots of work through work sessions with the Planning Commission and City Council to add additional language for specification, adding clarification for certain terms, using the words ensuring and encouraging throughout all of the development of the policy language, things like that. All right, second to last block, coordinated and connected infrastructure. Here we also did some more targeted outreach to local agency partners, utility providers, and city departments. So primarily city service providers that provide utility and infrastructure services to the city, as well as online survey and review by all of our committees, commissions, and council. So there are some key kind of decision points in this block were to condense and remove some redundant transportation policies that came from the transportation systems plan. We know that the TSP is near or is close to needing to be updated, and the city will definitely be reviewing the goals and policies for transportation once in this document, once the TSP is updated. But we took the decision to really finesse the language that currently exists from the current comp plan that comes from the TSP in preparation for new TSP language that will be coming down the pipeline in the next few years. And then, of course, lots of different wordsmithing and clarifications that were also added to a lot of the policy languages as well. And then finally, our very last block, healthy and valued ecosystems. Looks like this slide was accidentally copied over, so my apologies. We did not have a public workshop a week before COVID-19. Instead, we did another round of stakeholder interviews with state partner agencies, nonprofit groups, as well as other local regional agencies such as the Oregon Department of State Lands, Tualatin River Keepers, the Department of Environmental Quality, PGE, Clean Water Services, just some examples of folks that we reached out to have more targeted focus groups with to better understand the key trends and forecasts that are happening around the preservation of natural systems and parks and recreation, energy, watersheds, habitat, etc. A lot of work was already done for this block, given that your Parks and Recreation Master Plan was essentially adopted just as we were beginning this block. So this was a great opportunity to fold in that work directly, so that now your comprehensive plan is directly aligned with the goals and policies that are outlined in your Parks and Recreation Master Plan, which is always nice to have that continuity. All right, so with that, any final feedback or questions for Planning Commission, thoughts, reflections? We are all ears. And I guess I'll hand it back over to Erica if she has anything else to add.
I don't have anything else to add. But if you have feedback, questions, we would love to hear it.
Anais, do you want to stop sharing? Yeah, there you go.
Sorry.
I feel like we've been working on this since I started council 5 years ago. So it's kind of nice to see it on the tail end and over this hoop. So I think you guys have put together a really nice document and with a lot of great information for our community. And I've briefly reviewed it, and I'll do some more in-depth reviewing before final adoption, but looks good.
Unfortunately, our state mandates us spending an entirely too much money doing this, and we'll be spending entirely too much in the not too distant future because of the more frequent updates that are required. But it's good to see we're near the finish line. Erica, do you want to talk about, once this is adopted by the end of the year, assuming it's adopted by the end of the year, I don't want to assume, next steps now that we have a new comp plan, or do you want to talk about that another day?
No, I can go ahead and fill the council.
Because the work has just begun, folks.
It is. The work has just begun. So
5 years in and we're just starting.
So after the adoption of this plan, staff, we have been putting together an action plan to implement the comp plan. And these are actions that are based on the goals and policies in the plan. And it will serve as the work plan for the community development department, over the short and the short term, 1 to 5 years. And then, we'll continuously update this action plan until hopefully, we complete it over the next 20 years and have to, update the comp plan again.
So is it fair to say we should have a meeting to talk about your proposed action plan to see what the priorities of council on that action plan is? So
yes,
council knows just what is on the list.
Yes, we will. We will be definitely setting up a work session on the action plan with council.
Awesome.
And I think that I just want to stress that a comp plan should not be created and then sit on a shelf for 20 years and then updated. It's really intended to be, the foundation for, a future of work as well as updates to tweak things. And absolutely, it's got to have the council endorsement on priorities, what we work on first, what we go out for grants for, and all that stuff as well.
Jean, what do you think of it?
I am really proud to say that this was a community-driven process that, fortunately for us, our plan started before COVID started. So a lot of the visioning and the in-person meetings we had, prior to 2020 made the foundation documents really work with. Our CAC's been really tough. I have to say tough, and it's been nice that they continue to come to all the online meetings. They engage online. It's been really nice. Anais and her team have done an exceptional job. I feel as a commission, council, CAC, even the community has kind of run them through the ringer back and forth, making sure that we get what's important to our community. We've heard repeatedly that Sherwood's small town feel needs to remain in the forefront, and that our values of community and family are important. And I think this document will help preserve those. by preserving the landform that we all value, the green spaces, the open spaces, the small walkable neighborhoods. So if we can keep those in mind as we make our long range decisions, this document will live on, and we will have Sherwood West and other parts of our community growing the way the rest of Sherwood has grown in a way that we're proud of. So I'm happy. I'm really happy. So thank you for letting me speak.
You bet. Thank you, Jean. Other comments, questions?
I'm just glad to have this almost behind us so we can get started on the real work. Not to say that this wasn't real work, but I think everyone knows what I mean in terms of looking at our code and how do we actually move things forward.
Well done, everyone.
And I truly thought we might run up against the 7 o'clock hour after running a little longer on garbage rates, but we are about done. Any last comments?
I would like to make a comment more just for anybody watching this that's going, why doesn't council have more comments on the comp plan? And just the reminder that you guys have been seeing this throughout the whole development of this and have had opportunities to comment at different stages, and that is most likely why you don't have any comments now. It's really a culmination of all the work that council and planning commission has done up to this point.
Yeah, it'd be more of a concern if we all of a sudden said, oh, we really need to blow up this section. We regret what we did and we need to redo a part.
Agreed.
Wouldn't that be a good conversation?
Well, since you mention it. That was a joke.
Yeah.
I would just wanted to say that it's been really a delight to be part of the whole process and going to the meetings. And it's amazing how involved, some of the participants were, right down to the form of the word we used to describe something within, those different sections. We agonized about all of those kinds of things. And I sent Erica and I lots of pages of notes and comments and questions. I wanted to question everything in there, and I just think it's very thorough. But I'm very excited for the next part. Let's look at that action plan, because it's great. Now that we have this vision, we sort of have the essence of where we are. How did we get here? Let's start focusing on what are we going to do next. Absolutely, yeah. So thank you very much.
Here. Yep, that's the Sherwood West efforts. That plan that comes out of the group to us should embody this comp plan and its principles and goals. All right, well, anything else for the good of the collective on this topic or anything else? Otherwise, we'll adjourn a little early and have a short break before we start our city council meeting. It is crickets. With that, we are adjourned from the work session, everyone. Thank you, everyone.